more than 3 of you, just so that people are able to see it
Okay.
if they're looking at a recording.
Hey, we'll keep our mouths shut. We have 3 of our 5 folks here.
Well, we have a quorum, right? Yeah, we do.
Yes. Yeah.
We do.
Yep.
Well, I've gotten no email saying that they're not going to be here. But we got 4 minutes.
Al, are the letters on 44 First Street? They must be on the Dropbox by now, right?
Yeah, under the correspondence folder.
Okay. I'll check on those.
You'll see there's the correspondence from the county. And then there's correspondence from, there's a little petition with, I think, 4 people or 5 people in favor. And then there's about 5 letters there as well.
Okay. Wow, that's a lot for a small project.
But the Zach, I'm still seeing that the applicants aren't here.
Yeah, and we can give it a few minutes. I'll check my email just to make sure that they're not having issues logging on.
Hello, Roman.
Greetings and salutations.
Hey, Roman.
Hey, Alan, good to have you back.
Thank you.
So it looks like the applicant is the only attendee, or the applicant's representative is the only attendee right now. But we do have someone representing the applicant.
Now tell us when you want to begin.
I will leave that up to you. That is up to your discretion on when you'd like to start.
We'll wait. It's 6 o'clock. We'll wait a couple of minutes, see if there's anybody else. Chris is here.
Perfect. So you all let me know when you are ready to start.
Okay, ready. Tell me when.
I'm all ready to go. Al, I don't know if you want to do your normal introduction for the meeting, just to introduce.
We have 2 participants, so I'll make it short.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is a meeting of the Albany City Planning Board for the purposes of considering today one specific project. Because there's only 2 participants, I will keep the introduction short. The applicant for the project has 10 minutes to make a presentation, and that would be followed by questions from the planning board to the applicant. From there, we will entertain any testimony from the public. Each person speaking will have 3 minutes. And after that, we will hear from the recommendations from the planning staff based on the criteria that we must follow. Zach will explain how the timing works for the 10 minutes and the 3 minutes. And I would also mention that after recommendations by the planning staff and after we heard testimony from any public wishing to speak, the applicant then has 5 minutes to correct any misconceptions or any information that may be inaccurate. Zach, can you explain the timing?
Yeah, perfect, Al, thanks. So for anyone who would like to speak, feel free to send a message in the chat. And I believe it is, bear with me, I'm just trying to, we do have someone joining by the phone. So if you're wanting to speak, feel free to send a chat message. And then if you are joining us by phone, just press *9 to raise your hand if you would like to sign up to speak. And then we'll call on you when it comes to the testimony portion of the evening. I'll have a timer visible on the screen, and there will also be audible markers once you have 30 seconds left for the 3 minutes of your time. And then there will also be blinking lights once your time is expired. And then for Mr. Kraft, I'll just have a 10-minute timer going on in the background, and I'll just let you know once we've reached 10 minutes. There's some instances where we've reached 10 minutes for the presentation. We can leave it to the board whether they would like you to continue presenting or just finish your remarks in a few seconds. And then if anyone has any questions, feel free to just send me a chat during the meeting and I'll try to help you out. And then I see the person joining us on the phone has raised their hand. So I will make sure to call on you once we get to the public comment section.
Okay, thank you very much. And we'll begin. So the project that we're considering this evening is 44 First Street. It's a proposal in the RT, or that's the Townhouse District, for a conditional use permit to convert a 2-family townhouse into a 3-family townhouse. And the applicant is Real Property Solutions. And the representative, Mr. Kraft, you can begin with your presentation.
Great. Thank you to the board and Zach for allowing me to attend, present on this application. So Zach, should I just tell you when to change to the next slide? Is that fine? Or
yeah, feel free to just let me know when you want to progress and I'll move it forward.
All right, great. Yeah, so you can go ahead and begin So this is a subject property. It's 44 First Street, and the application is for a conditional use permit to convert the property from a two-family residence, full-year residence to a three-family full-year residence. Zach, if you can change slides, please. Thank you. So this is just an aerial context of the property. As you can see, based on First Street, North Hawk Street, to the left of the property, if you're on First Street, is vacant lots, and then to the right of it is a municipal property. Also added some maps, geographic maps of the area as well, just to kind of show you. I believe this property is within a townhouse zoning district. Next to it are mixed use or MUNC zoning districts, etc. It's within proximity to the downtown area of Albany. Very walkable and bike ready. It's a very walkable neighborhood. Also has access to bike paths and public transit. So it's a great fit for tenants who don't have vehicles in the neighborhood. Zach, if you may proceed to the next slide. Thank you. Again, additional context photo in regards to the property in context to 92 Hawk Street and 46 First Street as well, just so you have an understanding of the neighboring properties. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is the ingress and egress of the property. So the idea is that the idea would be to convert the basement unit in the property to a one-bedroom apartment. This is the ingress and the egress for the subject unit that would be converted into an apartment. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is the current floor plan of the basement apartment as it's currently situated. And in regards to the next slide, show you what the conversion would look like. So as you can see, it's again one bedroom apartment, full bedroom, pretty decent sized unit with a bathroom, kitchen, living room area. In addition, there's some extra space within that unit that the plan is to convert to a shared laundry space for all of the tenants in the unit, which is the shaded area right there. Next slide, please, Zach. And then living room area, pretty decent size living room area. Bathroom, thank you, Zach. Bedroom in the far right, and then kitchen area with the egress from the kitchen to the exterior. Next slide, please, Zach. So we did go around with the applicants to talk to a few of the neighbors in the area, inform them of what our plans were for the conversion, and for the most part, a few of the neighbors did provide that they had no concerns about the conversion that we were seeking to attend, and so we asked them to sign. So as you can see, we had neighbors from 51.5 First Street, 43 First Street, 51 First Street, and 58.5 First Street sign off saying that they were in support of the application for the conversion to the three-family residence. Next slide, please, Zach. That's pretty much it. Any questions or any further information that the board would like to have in regards to this application? Thank you for your time.
Hey, David.
Are there questions from the board?
Yep, I have a question, Al. It's going back to the photo. Hi, David. It's going back to the photo where you showed the egress, and it looks kind of rough back there. So my question is twofold. Yeah. Are you guys going to do anything to make that safer for whatever tenants would be?
Yes. So the idea would be that we would, to your point, yes, the terrain back there is a little bit uneven in slope. So we would level that out, and the eventual plans would be to put some form of a concrete pad, or just level it out so that it's a more safer walking space for that unit.
So I actually made a third question as I thought about this. So I'll go to my second question. Now, because of the angle of the picture, if this is an egress, let's say that there's a fire or something of that nature, is there a way for people, if they use this back door, to go around and make it to the front of the street? I can't see that from the.
Oh, yes, I apologize. Yes. So if you go to the one, Zach, if you may go back to the photo for the 44 First Street, 90th Street. So that side lot is empty. So in the case of an emergency, if someone went around the egress, they could just literally, if they're exiting, they hit left and there's the entire lot, or they could actually go straight back because there's empty lots also behind our property. So they could go straight back to the alleyway that is
that's my lot.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Yeah.
I want to be clear about that.
Yeah. Sorry. Well, I was just saying in terms of just at
I
least.
know exactly which lot you're talking about. That
Yeah. Just in terms of getting away from the vicinity of the building, there's multiple escape routes.
Right. Okay. So that was that question. And so my last question was, please don't tell me that it escaped me. As far as oh my God, I think it just escaped me. If I think it again, just move on. If I think it again, I'll come back. Sorry about that.
Sure, not a problem.
I wanted to, question I wanted to address, going back to the photograph of the ingress and egress. It looks like, do you have a building permit for this already, or are you taking it over from somebody who walked away from the project? Because what I see are new steps, and I also see in the basement, it looks like there's some construction going on in the basement. So I was just wondering
sure,
what was going on there. And
yeah, absolutely.
Did you start work and then have a stop work order or something?
Yeah, no, happy to clarify. So yes, this is a property where we're undertaking renovations of the property. We are in the process of replacing the front stairs and the entire rear deck on the property. We do have a permit on the rear deck and the front stairs that is currently still active, I should say. In regards to the basement unit, so when we acquired the property from the prior owner, it seemed like that they were in the process of actually doing some form of a conversion. I don't know if they ever actually had gotten approval for doing such, but I guess when they were informed or whatever it might have been, they stopped the work. So we haven't done anything in the basement unit because we're waiting to see if we got approved for the conditional use permit. But all of the work that's currently being done on the property is permitted work. So the replacement of the rear deck, the stairs, as you see, still not complete. This isn't the final version. This is just this is mid work that when this photo was taken. But yeah, all the work that's being done on the property is permitted work, or has.
The other question permits. The other question I had to do with the side lot. Do you own part of the side lot at all? So
actually we're in talking with the neighbor that there's a neighbor that owns two of the lots that are on the side of us on the North Hawk side. So that big square lot. So we were planning on having discussions with them to just see, maybe we're probably going to try to see if we could get some site plans or a survey done, just so that we know where the appropriate lot lines are on the property, because we don't know how much of the space belongs to us versus belongs to the neighboring owner.
If you find out, what the ownership is as in relationship to your building, or even looking at, I guess it's 92 North Hawk. I'm looking at the aerial photo and the numbers there. Would there be a possibility for you installing an off-site parking pad?
That's a good question. That would be something we would have to talk with the owner about. I don't believe. I mean, from our discussions, it sounded like for 92 North Hawk, he did have other plans for that lot, which did not include parking, from my understanding. So I wouldn't want to say that that's a possibility at this point. Again, we have thought about the parking matter, and we were looking at, again, keeping in mind the context of the neighborhood. It's very close to downtown. It's a very walkable neighborhood, public transit, access to bike path. So we feel like There are other opportunities where we're going to, where we have the potential to attract tenants that are not vehicle bound.
Right.
And so we think the neighborhood would still accommodate the additional units.
Okay.
Or vehicle, without extra, load on the parking in the area.
Well, let's confirm that. Zach, do you have anything regarding the USDO regarding parking? Because this is already an established structure, but does he have anything that he has to do regarding parking now that they're adding this additional unit?
Yeah, and thanks for that question. And we had a question from an attendee as well about that. So for townhouses, they don't have any parking requirements. So any townhouse is not required to provide off-street parking. And also, since it's a lot that's under 5,000 square feet, it's also exempt from having to provide parking as well. So the applicant's not required to provide parking as part of the conditional use permit process.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from the board?
I think all my questions have been answered. Thank you.
I also want to welcome our Corporation Counsel for the meeting, Robert McGee, who just joined us.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry I'm late.
Okay, we'll entertain public comment. And before we get to the public comment, I do want to mention to anybody who wants to comment that your comments have to be on what the planning board's jurisdiction is, which is site plan review, design, issues concerning parking, which is obvious one of the things that has come up, but not tenure. We do not have jurisdiction over whether Mr. Kraft is representing an owner or representing a rental company, who lives in the property, how it's managed, and whether it's owner occupied or not owner occupied is not the purview of the planning board. So you need to keep your comments specific to the issues that the planning board has the power to consider. If you start mentioning tenure, rental ownership, and all the things I mentioned, I will ask Zach to silence your microphone. So with that, we'll proceed.
Okay. So it looks like we have two people with their hands raised. So Denise, are you there?
I am here.
Okay, give me just 1 sec. I'm just going to switch to the countdown timer just so that you can see that on your screen. So bear with me just 1 second. So whenever you're ready to start, if you can just give us your name and your address, and then I'll start the timer once you've introduced yourself.
Good evening. My name is Denise Lacey. My husband and I own the property across the street. We are the owners of 43 First Street. My question is about the parking primarily. We're concerned about the availability of parking, especially if we're going to be adding tenants to the buildings. I'm not sure if this is a question you can answer or not. I believe there are people who live there already, and it seems to me that there is a shortage of parking now. So to add another unit with 1 to 2 more people who may also have cars, I just don't know where they would be able to park. There is alternate side of the street parking. Parking seems to be limited. Those are the concerns.
Thank you. Next up.
Okay, and I believe, Mr. Johnson, is that you? Mr. Johnson, are you there?
He's got his phone muted.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Feel free to start whenever you're ready, and hopefully you'll be able to hear the timer, but I'll also let you know in case you're not able to hear it.
Okay, thank you. Since my main concerns are not under your purview, because I was concerned that the property should be owner occupied, but I can't raise that issue. I have two other issues. The first issue is to echo the speaker prior to me, Lacey. I have concerns about parking because most of the houses are 2- and 3-family houses where people have cars in each family. It's a nightmare trying to get parking on the sidewalk because of all those cars. You frequently have to drive a fairly good distance away to find parking after people get off work. The solicitation, nobody solicited me, and I live at 28 First Street about this property. And my second concern is I've driven by there a couple of times and I see that the deck and the stairs are wooden. If there's a fire, somebody might be able to get out of the basement, but if there's a fire and all that wood catches fire, anybody on the second and third levels is going to have a problem coming down a burning up wooden fire escape. So I'm very concerned about that. And putting wood back there, it would seem to me it ought to be some kind of iron or non-flammable wood or something, so that if there's a fire, you can get down those fire escapes from the back. The other concerns I have, I can't raise, unfortunately. So that's the end of my comments.
Thank you very much.
Sorry about the delay for that. So there are no other speakers on the list right now. So I guess we can turn it back to the applicant for any rebuttal, unless any board members have any questions based on the public comment.
Well, Zach, I would prefer that you present the planning board's recommendation before we go into any rebuttal.
Okay, yeah, happy to do that. And sorry about that. So just to go over the conversion standards for adding a unit, I went over this at the workshop, but Al, since you weren't there, just going over this again, and for anyone who's attending who maybe wasn't able to attend the workshop, there are 4 review criteria that the planning board has to review as part of any conversion to add a unit from a 2 to a 3 family. So the first is that the building has at least 3 stories. So the building has 2 stories above grade and a basement that qualifies as a 3rd story. For the basement definition, the finished grade of the floor has to be less than 4 feet below the average grade along the front of the building. And the applicant had submitted evidence that it's only 42 inches below grade. The second is that no exterior changes to the structure are visible from a public right-of-way, and there are no exterior changes proposed as part of the project. The third is that new and existing units each have a minimum size of at least 1,000 square feet, or each occupy at least 80% of a single floor plate. So based on the presentation that Mr. Kraft presented, initially I assumed that the basement unit was occupying 100%, but since it's a shared laundry area, that is now reduced to 85% of the floor plate. So all 3 of the units occupy 85% of the floor plate, which complies with the standard. And then the fourth is that the lowest story must be at least 50% above grade, which this complies because the height of the unit is 95 inches and 53 inches are above grade, which comes out to be 56%. And then moving into the other conditional use permit requirements, I'll try and go through these quickly. The first being whether it's consistent with the provisions of the USDO and the city code, which it is. Whether the project would result in a random pattern of development. This is adding an existing unit to a building, so it's not changing the character of the neighborhood. And there are other 1, 2, and multifamily townhouses nearby, so this is contextual with the neighborhood. Whether the project would create any negative fiscal or environmental impacts on adjacent properties. This is classified as a type 2 action under seeker, which requires no further review, meaning that it has a minimal impact to the environment. And it's also surrounded by similar townhouse dwellings, so it's not going to create a negative impact on adjacent property owners for their any fiscal or environmental impacts on neighboring property owners. The fourth is whether it's consistent with the purpose and objectives of the zone district. This is a townhouse zoning district, and it's still intended to be used as a townhouse. And the townhouse district allows for a variety of unit sizes and configurations, which is consistent. Moving on to the fifth.
Zach, I have a question on that. I'm just wondering if this was just a typo, but you have here that the purpose of the property as 2-family, it is being proposed as a 3-family, not a 2. And it says here.
Yes, and that's a typo on my part.
Okay.
Yeah, and I apologize for that.
That's all right. Just wanted to make sure.
Nope, and that's a good question, and thank you for bringing that up. The fifth is whether the review standard is whether the project would result in harmful cumulative effects or impacts. The property across the street, 43 First Street, was the subject of a case before the planning board a couple of years ago. But since it doesn't create a more significant environmental impacts compared to other townhouse dwellings, the proposed conditional use is not going to create a harmful cumulative effect or impacts of similar conditional uses. Sixth review criteria is whether it would place excessive burdens on public improvements, facilities, services, or utilities. This is an existing building that has existing utility connections, and it's located in a neighborhood that's supported by public improvements, facilities, and services. And the last of whether the project will provide a necessary and desirable service that's in the interest of the public convenience and general welfare. And it's supporting the neighborhood by improving a contributing historic structure, and it creates additional housing unit in a walkable neighborhood that's close to a number of major employers downtown and along Clinton Avenue.
Okay. I had one question, which is item number 2. You mentioned that the district is surrounded by similar 1-family, 2-family, and multifamily townhouses. Yet some of the letters that were submitted mentioned that the whole area, I guess, I don't know exactly when, they weren't specific as to how far they went, consisted of only single and 2-family townhouses, but you mentioned here multifamily. Can you give us an idea of how many multifamily, or not exactly in numbers, but how close there are 3-family units in some of the buildings that are close to the subject property? Yeah,
so right across the street is 43 First Street, which that was the subject of a conditional use permit application to convert to 3 units. And there are a few other 3-unit dwellings nearby. And there's some multifamily districts as you get closer down to Tenbrook Street. But it's predominantly 1 and 2 family, but there are pre-existing 3-family units within the area.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions by the board in reference to the staff's presentation? Okay, hearing none. Mr. Kraft, do you have any further comments?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. And to just kind of address Mrs. Lacey's question about if there are any existing tenants in the property. At this time, there are no existing tenants in the property. And when we did acquire the property, we did acquire with tenants, but because we were going to undertake extensive renovations within the property, we ended that tenant relationship with that tenant. So the property is completely vacant at this time, as we're undertaking its renovations. In regards to the parking matter, again, this is something that we definitely considered heavily of how can we help alleviate concerns when it comes to parking in the area. Again, we tried to see if there were maybe opportunities to work with some neighboring property owners for some of their off-street parking spaces. This, unfortunately, that wasn't available. Again, we're keeping in mind that we are in a neighborhood that is closely it's closely located to the downtown area with the major employers. It's a walkable neighborhood. I don't even have my car myself. I live in the area, but I walk there all the time. There's bike paths, there's buses. So I think we have an opportunity here with this unit, even with the addition of the additional unit. When we are renting to tenants, we can remind them of the fact that, the downtown area is a lot of times it is congested when it comes to parking. So we would, advise tenants of the fact that they're not guaranteed any on-street parking right in front of the property. It's likely that they might have to park in a longer distance away. We'll keep them abreast of the fact that there are other forms of transportation in the community, such as walking, bus, bike. So then that way people understand they have the ability to maximize other means of transportation to get to and from their residence. And then in regards to Mr. Johnson's concern, I hear what he's saying. To be honest, with the price of wood, looking back, we probably wish we could have used iron or some other form of material, but at the time, that's what we went with. It's the building department issued a permit and has approved the materials that we've been using for the project. So that's all we can do at this time.
I would mention also, maybe to allay Mr. Johnson's fears, that when fires occur, people usually die of asphyxiation about 90% of the time. So it's not an exterior structure getting on fire. But I understand what you're saying about parking, and it has been our experience in approving other projects, even with higher densities than this, that those projects close to downtown tend to attract people who don't have cars for the very reason that they want to be convenient to their jobs. But to allay some of the concerns of the community, at least the people who spoke, I was wondering, do you own the rear yard all the way to the alley?
No, the lots that are behind our properties, they belong to a neighboring owner as well, a different neighboring owner. And again, this is something that we're trying to see if there's an option available, where we've been speaking to these owners to see. Again, it would all be dependent upon if that lot can be used for parking purposes. Again, I don't even know if current code would allow us to use that lot for parking, even if the neighboring owner would, allow us to use some of the space.
So your property doesn't go to the alley; it goes actually.
No, our property stops fairly shortly in the backyard area, so we don't have that much available.
Okay.
Extra lot space for that building.
Okay. Any other comments, questions to Mr. Kraft? Okay. Then I would entertain a motion to approve the proposal.
So moved.
Moved by Roman Kuchera.
Second.
Is there second by Glenessa Gayard? Further questions? Okay, all of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
And chair says aye also. So it passes unanimously, 5-0. Thank you all very much for your participation. And that ends the official part of the meeting that we are considering a project. We will go on for the information on the board concerning the USDO edits.
Great, thanks, Al. So I will try and keep this short, and I think I'll try and breeze through this quickly and go back through anything if you all have questions. But I just wanted to keep you all aware of the edits that are going on as part of the USDO. We've set up a USDO review webpage on our website that you can find through our main page. That'll include kind of a description of what we're looking to do, as well as upcoming meeting dates with the Common Council through their Planning and Land Use Committee, and through meetings of the whole council. And that'll include memos, PowerPoint presentations, and video links to the meeting, which I think I had provided copies of the memos and presentations to you all through the Dropbox, but these are also available on our department's website as well. And then also some larger discussion topics, because we think we're going to have more in-depth memos and discussion related to larger topics. And then also some links to some of the graphics that we're proposing to use for Article 2, which relates to district standards, and then also the permitted use table as well. So as part of this, Brad had put together a presentation, and I'm pulling slides from this presentation related to certain types of applications that we've received. I'm just going to go through the conditional use permits and development plan review as well. Prior to the USDO, the annual average for conditional use permits or special use permits when they were reviewed by the Board of Zoning Appeals was 32. That's now reduced to 11 a year. Primarily, as we saw tonight, the majority of these are for conversions to add a unit within a townhouse district. Some of the other ones relate to personal or business services, restaurants, or bars or taverns as well. And this is just kind of providing a summary of what I just mentioned. The usual review time is about 2 months. The majority of the applications have been approved so far, with about 30% of them relating to adding a dwelling unit within a building. And we are in conversation and in the process of discussing what makes sense going forward, of whether adding a unit within a townhouse district makes sense through a conditional use permit process, and whether there either need to be additional standards added, or whether that's something that can be done as of right with more prescriptive standards. Moving on to development plan reviews, the annual average has increased from 29 to 34 cases after the adoption of the USDO. The average review time is pretty similar for both major and minor development plan review. Minor development plan review are smaller projects that are reviewed internally by city departments. And then the average project cost is significantly different, usually less than $2 million for minor development plan review, and a little over $14 million for major development plan review. And also the cost is usually more for new construction as opposed to rehabilitation. And we're primarily seeing residential square footage being added to the city.
Zach?
Yep.
I'm just curious, on the chart that you, not before the chart, the line graph. Do you know why back in the late 80s and early 90s there was such a spike, or was that just maybe a lot of minor development plans? It's just interesting to see that there was such activity back then.
That is a good question. I'm not really sure why. It might be related to historic tax credits becoming more available in the late 80s. Although I think I think there was a little bit of a wave of that within the late 70s as well. It doesn't really line up with any updates that happened, because I believe the last update before the USDO was adopted was in 93. So we'd have to go back and look to see what had changed as part of that. But I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, that's why.
Thank you for the suggestion.
That was a story I heard, Zach, that you were correct, that it was tax abatements coming in and then expiring, or the program being discontinued.
Yeah, I thought maybe it was the minor development plans that were just really active.
Could be.
With individual properties using historic tax credits.
Yep.
And I'm not as familiar on the administrative reviews that we had for minor site plans at that point, or if we had minor site plans at that point. But I would tend to think that Martin's right on that, but I have to look back and see where most development was happening. You weren't even born then. No. And Chris, thanks for the suggestion for the numbers to the chart. I'll revise this and add those numbers and send that out within the next week. So it's a little bit easier to read.
It wasn't even this one. This one's a little bit easier because it's got the lines coming out. I think it was the next one that you had that had some of it was a 3-dimensional, when you had the 3D, it's kind of off. You can just put the dollar amounts at the end of the bars. It probably makes it a little bit more easy to read. I know what it says.
Okay.
No, but it's a good suggestion. And I will also make sure to update that as well. Oh, sorry about that. So there are a number of things that we're looking to do just to kind of reevaluate what development standards make sense going forward, how to make it easier for minor development plan reviews within the city. We're also just seeing a lot of residential uses, so looking to promote more commercial uses going forward. And also maybe to see if we can find more opportunities for rehabilitation, since it costs less and it's more environmentally friendly as a result. And then as the pie chart shows, the majority of applications have been approved, with the next largest being withdrawn. We still have a fair amount under review and one application denied. We're also looking just at affordability in general and inclusionary housing as well. There is an inclusionary housing requirement for any developments that include 50 or more dwelling units. So this chart on the bottom left shows some of the developments that had more than 50 units and the number of inclusionary housing units they would have to provide as a result. The requirement's at least 5% for units. And continuing on that as well, we're looking, when the USDO was adopted, there was language saying that at the 6-month review, this is functionally under the 6-month review label, that accessory dwelling units would be revisited. So that's also going to be a component as part of this update as well, to allow ADUs and develop design standards and dimensional standards going forward.
Zach, in consideration of inclusionary housing, is there any thought about, under the USDO, to increase the requirement beyond 5%?
I think that'll be a discussion point. That's in Article 4, and we haven't gotten to that point yet. But I think it's something that we're looking at. and whether it should just be exclusive to multifamily dwellings and whether there are other situations or use types with multiple dwelling units, that are 50 or more that we should be considering to require them to follow this as well. So I think this is definitely a discussion point, but we're not quite there in the discussions with the Common Council.
Okay, thank you.
How about, was there any indication of after that we had a change in the USDO about all the additional incentives that were withdrawn for a particular time frame? Did that increase the affordable housing exception, or whatever you want to call it, the use of that exception, or no?
No, that was just related to blue roofs, allowing an applicant to increase a story, or I believe there's some reduction in parking requirements that would allow. That was just removed. But again, that's also in Article 4, and we've only been in discussion with the council from Article 1 to 3, which Article 1 is basically the purpose statement for the document. Article 2 is about district standards, and then Article 3 is relating to the permitted use table as well as use-specific standards. So when we get to Article 4, which is dimensional standards, that'll be a component of that, since that's where all of the incentives and the affordable housing requirements are located. So again, I'm just going to try and breeze through because this is a large PowerPoint. But again, feel free to stop me as we go along. For the purpose statement of the document, we were just looking to make some minor modifications, just changing for the purpose statement under 3 to removing residential, because the city has multiple types of neighborhoods that are not just residential. So we wanted to make sure that the USDO's purpose statement is reflecting that, many different types of neighborhoods are protected and preserved through the USDO. And also just wanted to emphasize the importance of promoting racial equity within those neighborhoods. And then for number 7, just removing the verbiage related to encourage the aesthetic quality, just because that's kind of a separate thing from the historic urban form. And we're still looking at potentially adding another purpose statement just to address overall design within the city. As part of Article 1, this is where interpretations are included. So interpretations and unlisted uses are mentioned throughout the document. So this is a larger discussion of how we can provide more transparency and opportunities for public comment when interpretations are made by the chief planning official, or if there's an unlisted use, how the chief planning official is classifying that use. Right now, interpretations are either made by the chief planning official or through the Board of Zoning Appeals. So we're looking to just have the chief planning official make interpretations, and then if an applicant disagrees with said interpretation, or neighboring property owner feels aggrieved, they can file an administrative appeal with the Board of Zoning Appeals. And the Board of Zoning Appeals can review and determine what the appropriate course of action is, whether that's to remand back to the chief planning official to maybe create a new use or a USDO text amendment, whether that's to uphold what the chief planning official determined, or whether there's some other course of action that needs to take place. And this is just kind of reiterating what I had mentioned, trying to make sure, again, that interpretations don't hold up smaller projects, for property owners who might be installing a deck and there might be a unique situation with the deck that they're trying to install. but also trying to make sure that when interpretations are made, that all relevant considerations are being considered, and that people have an opportunity for public comment. I'm going to skip from Article 1 to Article 3 because that's how we have been reviewing it with the Common Council, and I'll come back to Article 2. So for Article 3, I'm again just going to breeze through. This is in the permitted use table. So we're looking to remove the references for the district standards because we're looking to do a larger overhaul for Article 2, which is the district standards. We're looking to separate the industrial uses from the land conservation uses into separate zoning district typologies, which is industrial and then open space, and then also separate out land conservation into park zoning districts and then natural areas. So parks are really going to just be for city parks, and then natural areas are going to be areas where no development really makes sense. And they shouldn't be disturbed. Continuing onward, adding a new land use category for utilities and infrastructure, and adding some new uses, including small wireless facilities and solar farms. We had a V designation within the permitted use table, which allowed for
small,
Yep,
small
go ahead, Al.
wireless facilities. Those are the satellite dishes. Is that the idea?
Those are 5G facilities. So
okay.
The FCC has required that small wireless facilities have to be permitted within a community, although it does allow the community to establish certain design and siting standards for those facilities. So this is just recognizing that, and those design standards are actually, and siting standards are under review through the Common Council right now to adopt those. Again, just to provide protections that facilities aren't being located in inappropriate places, that they're promoting co-location facilities as much as possible. Design standards within historic districts, just to make sure that it's not creating a nuisance through the establishment of them.
But does that also, though, can that section, small wireless facility, relate also to satellite dishes?
No, satellite dishes are listed as a separate accessory use within the accessory uses of the permitted use table, and those are currently there. Okay,
and so when somebody, you don't think there'd be a legal challenge where somebody says, well, the dishes are small wireless facilities and you're saying they're permitted in every district, and down here you're telling me they're an accessory use. So would there be a quick issue of confusion there and a potential court case?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that's just on our part as we're including small wireless facilities within the city code, just creating definitions that are distinct enough where it's easy to direct an applicant to the definition section of our code just to show how those are different. So,
okay, so they'll be in the definition, in the glossary at the end.
Yeah, and Chris just posted an article about 5G within Rochester right now. This is something that we're seeing across the country. So it's a big issue. I mean, internet access is important, but also just making sure that where these are located are not creating a nuisance in the community is also important as well. So it is good to follow up on if you want to do research.
Zach,
yeah.
The issue that some of the municipalities are fighting about is their ability to charge the providers for access to public poles. And the FCC created a rule that preempted a lot of folks from being able to to charge that money. So that's where the fight is, and then Rochester is fighting hard, saying this is our stuff. We should be able to charge whatever we want. The federal government can't set prices in a municipality. That's the fight right now.
Hmm.
Yeah, there are some limitations, specifically related to the review time. There is a little bit of a stop clock in how long a municipality can take to review an application, as well as just the application fees. I'm not as familiar with fees for, leasing space from, a public utility pole. We do have someone on our staff that dedicates most of her time related to 5G review. So she's our go-to person in the office. And Amy, when she worked here, she worked on a lot of those agreements as well. But this is just trying to, again, recognize that this is an existing use and just reemphasize design and dimensional standards going forward. Okay. Moving on, we had a V designation, and this stood for vacant. So if there was a building that was vacant for 5 or more years, initially we had a designation that allowed for someone to use that property after getting a conditional use permit. We didn't see anyone use this option, so we're just looking to, in some instances, remove the allowance or just change it just specifically to a conditional use, which functionally a lot of these, it was required to get a conditional use permit. So a lot of these are just changing to conditional uses. And then in other instances, like with the townhouse zoning district, allow for community centers and cultural facilities within existing ground floor or basement storefronts or existing non-residential structures. And then in the industrial districts, allowing for bars or taverns within light industrial and heavy industrial zoning districts, which are I1 and I2. Just on the whole, we're also looking to add allow more use allowances within industrial districts, primarily in the I2 zoning district. This can include principal uses and accessory uses and temporary uses. A lot of the uses are just trying to reflect, there's no real benefit to not allowing those uses there. And in some instances, we've seen some interest for people for establishing uses within the I2. Currently, we only have 2 areas of the city that are zoned I2, which is basically the port and then the rail yards that are along I-90, kind of to the west of Tivoli Preserve. But in the instance of new I2 districts being created, it's just good to think about moving forward. And then also with the new park designation, allowing more uses within a park zoning district. We've been seeing interest, for beer gardens, like temporary beer gardens within parks, or food vendors within city parks. So just recognizing that desire and need. And that was part of the reason we were proposing separating land conservation into 2 separate districts to allow for, small scale development in city parks, but also recognizing there's some areas of the city that should be conserved, and there should just be no development whatsoever. Continuing onward, we're, as part of this, and just in general planning practices, shifting away from the word family to unit, because family sometimes has a connotation that doesn't accurately reflect how a lot of households operate. So just shifting away from the word family to unit, and then also to add a new use for 3-unit detached dwellings. There are some instances where we've seen townhouse dwellings or structures that are similar to townhouse dwellings, but have been classified as multifamily, just since they're detached. So just recognizing that there is kind of a middle intensity within these uses, and providing an allowance for them. We've also added laboratory or research facility and medical clinic, separating those out from the current office use category, with it being conditional primarily for laboratory or research facility in most mixed use zoning districts, and permitted for medical clinics in most zoning districts.
Would blood plasma centers be included in either of those definitions? No.
No, that would still be a separate use.
Okay.
For personal or business service, potentially looking to change that from a conditional to a permitted use within the mixed use neighborhood edge zoning district, and thinking about ways to quantify or ensure that there are situations that don't create conflicts with neighboring residential zoning districts. So there could be certain design characteristics or sizes or the use that might elevate it to a conditional use permit, but allowing for more personal or business services. And then also allowing artisan manufacturing as a conditional use within mixed use neighborhood edge as well. And I think, Martin, that's kind of echoed some of your comments for providing more opportunities for makers spaces as well. So trying to address that.
Nope, that's good.
Moving into permitted use tables, expanding accessory uses, and then temporary farmers markets within residential and park zoning districts. For cabarets, a lot of those they can have similar operating characteristics as churches or religious institutions, which are permitted in, almost all zoning districts. So having that be able to go through the licensing process with the city clerk, where the city clerk and city departments can make that determination on whether a cabaret is appropriate. Expanding electric vehicle charging stations to all zoning districts. And I believe Councilmember Doche also made the recommendation of adding it to natural area, which is a good suggestion as well. So we would be adding that as well. And sidewalk or outdoor cafes, because there's a lot of instances where there's legal non-conforming restaurants that already have outdoor cafes or sidewalk cafes. So just trying to recognize that and provide some use criteria for those, just to clarify the legality of those uses. And then for farmers markets, currently the use standards limit it to only being permitted in commercial districts. So just expanding that, specifically within the park zoning district, there's the Washington Park Farmers Market, and we've seen some smaller farmers markets in residential zoning districts as well. So just trying to recognize that some of these uses are already happening and provide more flexibility for them. So moving on to some of the proposed removals or limitations, we're looking to prohibit any new pawn shops within the city. They're conditionally permitted right now in the mixed-use community highway and permitted as of right in the light industrial zoning districts.
That's what it is now?
Yep, and it's proposing to remove those allowances.
Remove them entirely?
Yes.
Why? And why is that?
Yeah, so with pawn shops, a lot of them have some negative land use impacts just in terms of frequent traffic and impacts related to crime with them. So just trying to address some of those impacts by removing the use. We don't have a lot within the city right now, but also just as we've been working on this, in our department and with the Common Council, just trying to create a more equitable city and promote equity through the city. So trying to identify uses and modifications to the USDO that will promote a more equitable city moving forward.
Oh, I would suggest that at least it be considered a conditional use in the industrial districts and not eliminated entirely. They do have their purpose. And if you put them in the industrial district and make it a conditional use, then we have some control over it. So.
It's going to go next to Blood Plasma Center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
This sounds like something that one person on the council proposed or something. I don't know. It's just kind of weird.
No, this was actually one of my suggestions. So feel free to shift the blame to me.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. That's okay. There are also just some negative, just societal impacts related to pawn shops as well. In terms of, I think since the Common Council had made the determination for blood plasma centers that they have negative impacts on exploiting some people, just trying to look with the zoning amendment or the updates, are there other uses that have similar societal impacts going forward as well, and also their related land use impacts, and looking to, again, promote a more equitable city. And I'm taking notes, so feel free to chime in, or if there's any suggestions on anything that I've brought up that you thought I should have added, feel free to chime in as well.
I'm hearing your clickety clack of your keypad.
Sorry about that.
No. So I know you're taking notes as we've talked.
Moving onward, not just limiting the allowance for new automobile washes, so still allowing them as a conditional use in mixed use community highway and mixed use campus institutional and the light industrial district, and as a permitted use in the heavy industrial district. But again, it's an auto-oriented use that use up a lot of water and require intensive design to make sure that they are not creating negative environmental impacts for water quality, but also just looking to promote different types of uses and design that's more pedestrian friendly. So just looking to reflect that with these changes.
I gotta admit, I find it kind of odd that I would want to go get my car washed in an industrial location, and that a hall fencer or somebody would want to say, "Oh, hey, we need to get another car wash, in this area. Hey, there's a great industrial lot up there." It just seems nonsensical from a perspective of a potential developer. I can see conditional use and stuff like that, but they're going to want to be on a main commercial, close to the pawn shops.
And I think for the allowances in industrial districts, this was just trying to recognize that there might be, automobile washes for larger vehicles,
like trucks,
as opposed to light vehicles. Yeah, trucks and other large equipment that might be in existence. So just trying to recognize that might be a use that comes up in those areas, and just allowing for that.
Yeah, so you have a conditional use from the community highway and a conditional use for what's the other one? MUCI?
Mixed use campus institutional.
Oh,
so
that's right.
Thinking about like college campuses of or just large campuses where they might have some sort of smaller automobile wash.
Just for FYI, if I'm not mistaken, I may be, but I think your more modern car washes actually have a recycle/reuse of the water systems built in. So they're not as, they don't use as much water as the old ones.
Yeah, and that is what we're seeing moving forward. I mean, you know, I think there are, I think primarily trying to look at the design of them, especially when thinking about making sure that cities can be more multimodal, essentially just allowing for, you know, all types of, you know, pedestrians, cyclists, and automobiles to function together. And it's a, you know, audio oriented use. So just looking to try and pull back some of those uses going forward when we're looking at the code. Anything else on this? I'm just taking notes, so feel free to chime in. Perfect. Okay, moving on. The next one for vehicle fueling stations. We have changes here removing a lot of the allowances within the mixed use districts, although this was a large conversation with the Common Council. And I think, you know, on the whole for the entire city, for vehicle fueling stations, the primary goal with this was just to think about where we want to go in terms of vehicle fueling stations that provide gasoline for cars and underground fuel storage. So looking to limit that going forward. You know, I think we're going to see alternative fuels come up within the city, whether it be hydrogen or fast charging electrical stations that might come up where people do want to see that more. So this might not be the final proposal, but I think we are looking to identify where it makes sense to maybe have new alternative fueling stations, what the design should be for those fueling stations. Some council members mentioned sometimes it's not even the pumps with alternative fuels, but more the convenience retail that creates bad urban design for pedestrians and just architecturally. So I think this is going to be a larger topic going forward on what design standards we want to see moving forward, what types of fueling options are available at new stations. So just things to look at moving forward.
Would it be possible? Feel free to chime in. Would it be possible to split the vehicle fueling stations into traditional fueling stations that provide gasoline and those that provide alternative energy sources, most specifically electric? Because one of the things that's happening is that there are electric so-called fueling stations in places like shopping center parking lots. The Honest Way Co-op has 4 electric vehicle spots reserved so people can charge their cars when they're shopping. So is it possible to split this into 2? So you have the traditional ones and then you have electric ones.
Yeah, and I'll go back to this as well. So we do have electric vehicle charging station as an accessory use.
Yeah.
So really this is, a lot of times we see that the service to charge your vehicle is not monetized or someone doesn't have to pay to charge their vehicle. And that's where we're seeing it a lot. You know, I think it'll be important moving forward when technologies evolve, you know, for fast vehicle charging, whether someone will be charged for that, kind of like we see with current gasoline vehicle fueling stations where you can charge your car within, you know, 90 seconds or something like that.
Right.
But I think that's a good point to think about moving forward as well. And that was also brought up at the discussion as well of just, the design of this is probably going to change a lot for electric vehicle charging stations. There's some things where the design might still be a little similar for, natural gas or for hydrogen. So trying to think about the design more globally, but it could be something where it needs to be split into multiple uses to reflect that better.
I just like us to get rid of fossil fuel stations entirely in the city. We have plenty of them. We don't need any more.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to limit them further. It would solve some of the problems that we run into with a few of our cases. Oh, and actually, I don't know if you noticed, but the state legislature is considering a bill to ban non-electric cars by 2035.
Yeah.
So it's coming in a big way.
Sounds like that would align with this well.
Well, I'd just like to throw a recommendation in that we consider banning any more fossil fuel stations, period.
And I think that was one of the takeaways from this was I think council members were supportive for banning new stations that provide gasoline. I think it's just figuring out for moving forward just for design standards of how the look of vehicle fueling stations should be, how that relates with convenience retail that we normally see with it. So I think a lot of that is more on the design elements and not as much the issue of gas itself. Because even just on a cursory look, the majority of the city is within 5 minutes of a gas station. So I don't think, and that's something that we would provide more information on as this gets further along just to support that. But there's not as much of a need for gasoline vehicle fueling stations, but we are seeing more of a desire and need for alternative fueling stations.
Well, something to consider if, in theory, moving forward, if the number of electric vehicles increases significantly, and I'm a steward or something like that, I'm going to want a lot to include gasoline, petroleum products for my people with old cars like Al and me, and plenty of electric stations for my customers with the new vehicles. So you're talking more space that's going to be needed. And then the other thought was, and I'm trying to picture where in the city this could happen, but if we have suddenly an area that booms as the new development area, and I can't really picture where that would be, but suddenly either
maybe Southern Boulevard.
Yeah, something where there's significant redevelopment, with multifamily or residentials and whatnot, and it's an instance where vehicles are used by the occupants. They're going to want a fueling station to accommodate them. So I'm hesitant to be super limiting. I understand, we have significant numbers, but also know that development ideas change. So our current existing gas stations and stuff may be adequate now, but if our requirements change for facilities to be larger, then they can't maybe operate on those same postage stamp lots. So they would need something different. So are we putting the screws to ourselves by being too limiting?
Well, I think for electric vehicle charging, as Zach was just pointing out, they're going to be chargers everywhere. I don't think you're going to go to a special gas station or something like an electric station to get fuel.
I would guess that that most of the in the future, most of the multifamily complexes that we might be considering, they're going to have parking, either lots or parking under the buildings. And I would guess that almost every one of them is going to be installing electric locations.
I agree. And when we've already covered that in the zoning code. So
yeah, that's accessory everywhere. No, I understand there's different ways of looking at it. I'm just saying that you don't know what the future would actually require. And
right.
So I hate to just pin ourselves into a corner, paint ourselves in a corner.
I guess to Roman's point, the same way we talk about having food deserts, you look at, we've probably got gasoline deserts right now. And my guess is as the demand for electric vehicles increases, it will increase in the places where currently there are lots of gas stations, which will likely diminish as the demand for that gas goes down, even though gas stations right now aren't about selling gasoline, they're about the convenience and going into shops and buying. We saw that with our Stewart's escapade a couple months ago. But in the places where folks are least likely to have electric vehicles, there already doesn't exist a lot of fueling stations for regular vehicles. So we should just keep that in the back of our head as we pursue. But we can advance the conversation, Zach. I mean, I'm done, but I was hearing this is an interesting piece.
No, and I think, that's something we've been thinking about as well. Just, again, I think that's the importance for us on our end to qualify this, with some GIS mapping just to show, how much of the city is covered within 5 minutes of a gas station, to make sure that all neighborhoods are being represented with that availability of the use. And then I think going back, Roman, to your point as well, I think initially we had classified this as vehicle fueling station to cover, I think, the transition from solely gas to having gas and alternative fueling. I think that's going to be, a multi-decade process of transferring from gas to gas and alternative fuels to just having solely alternative fuels. So I think it's going to be an evolving process for, all communities as we move towards different types of cars and different types of transportation.
Yep. No, I agree. Like I said, my just concern wasn't, it's not like I'm a big fan of, getting more gas stations and whatnot in the city, but I don't want us to put ourselves in a position where we don't allow something where it may be needed in the future because of future development and change in development requirements. So that's all. Al needs a place to put gas in that 57 Chevy.
Yeah, but I already have it. Every Stewart station has non-ethanol, so that's not a problem.
So I just wanted to check in with everyone, and I know the agenda was short, so I just didn't know, would people like me to continue? Would people like me to continue for a set amount of time? Because I just want to make sure, and apologies for not putting this on the agenda earlier, but is everyone okay to continue or?
How much
you
more
already screwed us, Zach, so let's go.
How much more do you have, Zach?
There's a few more slides. The stuff on Article 2 is going to be a lot faster. And again, I can breeze through this and we can follow up at a future meeting if there's something you have more questions on. But again, I want to try and answer
more
as many
slides, Al.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
24 more slides. We're on slide 60 of 84.
Yeah, that's what I just noticed that. I think that's a lot.
I can be quick.
I say we give Zach half an hour and let him smoke through it.
There's a lot here. This is all design standard stuff from what I'm looking through.
Right. Do you need us to talk about more length on this stuff, Zach? I mean, because that, that sort of indicates that we might want to do it another night when we do have more time.
I think
I'm happy to do that.
I think we should
read. Go ahead.
My feeling is for this whole section with the design standards, I think we should read that and then come back with comments or consider it at another meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
because there's a lot there, but you know, it's all laid out and it shows where there's changes.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
So really quickly, and I promise this will be really quickly, there are some other uses that are listed for maybe reducing their allowances, such as self-storage facility and drive-in or drive-through facilities, adding short-term rentals as a new use. And then for Article 2, we're looking to remove a lot of redundant content and add new axiometric, I believe I'm pronouncing that right, drawings to replace some of the current visual aids to show kind of the general context and character of neighborhoods. The drawings on the left are what currently are there, and what's on the right is what we're proposing. We had our original consultants who developed the code create these drawings. And then going back, we also had regulating plans within our form-based districts, so looking to turn those into new zoning districts as well, which, yep. So looking to add those as new zoning districts as well, because there's a lot of instances where it might make sense to have some uses in some portions of the form-based areas and not in others. '84 of '84, but I'm happy to go back through if there's any other questions, or if there's specific discussion topics you would like for another meeting. Happy to hear those out and prepare something more in depth so we can have a longer conversation on that.
What you're thinking about moving these forward, in terms of schedule?
So the schedule for the Common Council is on the USGO review website. I am not sure. I believe since this is my understanding, is since the original 6-month review updates received a recommendation from the board, I don't believe that this is coming back officially for another application. So again, this is why I'm trying to go over this with you all. And if there are comments that you would like to formally make to the Common Council early on in the process, just trying to get that in early so that your feedback is still part of the process, and hopefully make sure that we're not missing something, based on your experience for reviewing these applications as well.
Mm-hmm.
I would suggest that we do, that the board reads through the section that the 24 pages that we haven't gone through, see what the changes are, and then at a future meeting, we can go over it and comment on it. Or we could send comments directly to Zach.
That sounds good.
Any other thoughts?
That works for me. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, if there are any other thoughts from the board.
No, that's probably the most logical way to do it.
Yeah, it takes a little bit of reading and observing to really come up with a good understanding of what we're looking
at. Okay.
We're still working with the Common Council right now on Article 3, which is the permitted use table and the use-specific standards. So we're working on that right now. For any of these committee meetings, you can attend through Facebook Live and watch that, or watch the recordings through the Common Council's Facebook page as well, just to kind of stay up to date on what they're thinking about and what concerns they're bringing up and that we're bringing up at those meetings. So it's moving at a fairly rapid pace. We are looking to have this to the Common Council for a final vote in late September or early October. So we're moving through sections, within 2 to 4 weeks So again, happy to keep you all up to date on the changes. But I would recommend submitting, as early as possible, just so that we're getting your feedback in and sharing that with the Common Council. Is this something for the next workshop meeting you'd like to have a discussion on, or the next meeting in May?
The workshop might make sense.
Yeah, if we could submit comments and then talk about them at the workshop, that would be
good idea.
But I would urge that people look at this and give feedback so that we can do this at the workshop meeting, which would be probably around the 11th of May, maybe. Is that right?
I don't have my schedule in front of me. Yes, it would be the 11th.
Okay. Any other things that we need to talk about? Okay, before we adjourn, I just wanted to mention that I want to thank all the board members for your kindness and your cards and comments. I really appreciate that. That was a great comfort to me. And Zach, if you could also transmit that thank you to the members of the planning staff as well. Appreciate it.
Of course, I'm glad to have you back.
Mm-hmm.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thanks, folks.
All right.
Good night,
Have a good evening.
everyone.
Thank you, Al. Take care.